So we're going to talk about supplier relationships today. One thing with suppliers is your company needs them. You want to maintain a good relationship with all your suppliers, but you want to ensure that you have good quality suppliers. Now, I can give you an example and we can start off. I went into work for a company and they were having trouble with a metal part that they were buying from a company. And so it was really affecting shipments going out the door, and the customer was complaining about the part having corroding issues in its application. Now, it wasn't a very complex part. It was actually a case, a metal case. It was painted black. The problem was that there was corrosion underneath the paint, which led to something that was called pimpling. And in some cases the paint came off. In some cases, I'm talking about case, but in some instances the case would rust, and the rust would come off onto the printed circuit board, causing if not just aesthetic problems, possible corrosion and shorting problems. So we had to get the problem fixed. So I talked to the engineer who had first worked on the problem. He'd worked for the company only for about a year. Big automobile design guy, works for Nissan on their racing team design group, and travels all over the world now. So that here's someone who got their engineering degree and had a goal for himself, and that's what he wanted to do, and in his spare time he would race his Nissan car that he would drive during the week. So I guess I mentioned that so that if you have a personal goal, you can reach it. Well, he had gone out and done a supplier review, and he absolutely thought this shop was wonderful. And so I pulled up his notes that he had filed at the time under his customer site evaluation, and it talked glowingly about everything that they could do. So I went to visit them. Well, it turned out that yes, they are a metal shop, but their specialization is in chrome. Made beautiful chrome parts for motorcycles and cars. Absolutely fantastic quality of end product going out on those. And as I walked through the facility, what I noticed was they didn't really have a lot of stamping experience. A lot of times they bought their parts and then applied the coating. So when I investigated further, it turned out they were actually buying the case from another manufacturer. So we actually had two suppliers in our supply chain, one we didn't know about. And then they were doing the coating, which is what they were an expert at. So they were putting on this painted coating, and the problem was as I worked through their supplier of cases and what problems were happening, to avoid rusting, the first supplier was putting on oil on the cases when they got into rainy or high humidity parts of the year to ensure that the case wouldn't rust. In the wintertime, when it was much drier, they weren't putting this on. Well, you have to remove that oil prior to painting, and you have to prep the surface. And so even though the manufacturer who was selling us the part had done some prep work, they weren't removing the oil. And they also didn't realize that there were storage issues with components that they bought in the wintertime that may not have gotten shipped to us until the summer. So the parts started to pre-rust even before they were painted. Well, this is the reason that you have to have supplier relationships, and you want to have a relationship only with a certain number of suppliers. It should be a big deal to bring on a new supplier to an organization. There should be justification as to why. Why can't you do business with someone that you already have a history with? The supplier relationships are generally set up by purchasing. There's a good chance if you're ever going to have a meeting with a supplier that somebody from purchasing will always want to be present. One, to ensure that if you're requesting something that the supplier should be paid for, that someone knows about it, because quite often engineers end up requesting things and thinking that they're going to get that for free, and then a bill shows up, and then you're trying to get that paid and nobody had it in their budget, and it becomes an issue. The other reason is to make sure we know what the customer committed to, or the supplier committed to, and we also know have a kind of independent record of the discussion. Sometimes the purchasing department can almost feel like they're impeding the progress of engineering. I know I've certainly felt that way on occasion. The best thing to do is just talk out what the plan is ahead of time. So what we want to try to do is ensure that we have good communication going in both directions. We want to work out a price with the supplier. You never want to try to gouge your supplier. You want them to manufacture a product for you at a fair price, because if they aren't making money off of your product, they're not going to pay a lot of attention to it. They're going to be aggravated by it. They need to make money, just like your company needs to make money. So you want to negotiate a fair price that doesn't gouge your organization either. It should be a win-win solution. When they're not win-win, it is painful. Now, when you set up a supplier relationship, there's usually a contract. The purchasing manager or director is usually authorized to sign those. You will need to realize that some of the discussions that you're having with your supplier are confidential in nature. You should be sure that whatever you are discussing isn't confidential information, and if it is, that you have had them sign a non-compete and a non-disclosure agreement. And the non-compete and the non-disclosure keep them from going into competition with you, and the non-disclosure keeps them from talking about your enhancements or improvements to their other customers who may be your company's competitors. So having a good supplier relationship is fantastic. When there's a problem, you have someone that you can pick up the phone and call, and this can be very helpful. Enjoy your day.